Welcome to the podcast of Clearview Church. We believe seeing Jesus changes everything and everyone. We hope you enjoy this week's message.
In college, some friends and I led a small group, a home Bible study, and we met in, a pretty normal, modest-sized house. But we started it at the beginning of the fall semester. I think we were talking about the parables of Jesus or something like that, and genuinely, there was a move of God, and more people, week after week, kept showing up to the point that it was like comical how many college-age people were crowding into this little house. People were sitting on the kitchen counters and just like listening through the doorways. One week, somebody sat on the toilet just because that was a place to sit. And we're like, wow, after this, we've just got the bathtub left. That's it. God is doing an awesome work. And then, we had Christmas holiday, and then we come back for the spring, and we were thinking, okay, what are we going to teach for the spring semester? And somebody said, well, Ecclesiastes is a cool name, and there's 12 chapters, and we've got 12 weeks. Sold. I mean, that logic was just overwhelming to those of us who had never read Ecclesiastes. And anyway, so we just figured, we didn't know much, obviously, so we just figured we'd read ahead each week and kind of ask some questions and basically wing it and trust the Spirit. And by the fourth or fifth week in Ecclesiastes, it was just incredible what had happened. We had grown that Bible study that we thought couldn't get any bigger from 50, 60 people to all the way to 6. 6 of us. Death by Ecclesiastes. It was a little bit traumatic, and we found some more parables of Jesus to teach. And if I'm honest with you, that is the first and last time I did any kind of series on Ecclesiastes. Until today. Welcome, friends. Once again, we find ourselves here in a really exciting season in the life of our community. We just had the women's retreat. We've got all of these small groups, more small groups than we've ever had before going. We've got so many new faces. Some of you are here maybe for the first time today, and boy, what a day. It's this really beautiful season, exciting season of growth, new faces, deeper connections. I'm going to need you to pray that we find life through Ecclesiastes this time. Now, I will tell you, we're going to do 3 weeks instead of 12. And I've been thinking about it a little bit in the last 20 years, so hopefully there's a little bit more understanding going into it this time. If you're unfamiliar with the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes, you may think I'm overstating the challenge of this text. I am not. Old Testament scholars describe it as the most peculiar book in the Bible, and that, friends, is saying something. There's a book where a guy gets swallowed by a whale. And they're like, you know what makes less sense to me than that? Ecclesiastes. Other descriptors of this book are that it is dark, strange, morbid, contradictory, even irreligious. As in, like, how did this get into our Bibles? It is safe to say that no one demanded that I preach this series on Ecclesiastes, and in a few weeks I may question this choice myself. If any one of you here today said, Ecclesiastes, John, I don't get it, Ecclesiastes is my favorite book of the Bible, you would be the first person to ever say that to me. And I might have concerns. So I don't suggest any kind of Bible reading plan where you just read Ecclesiastes all by itself and nothing else for like a year straight. We need to take it in balance with the rest of Scripture and especially the teachings of Jesus. But you may be wondering, why would we bother? That's a great question. And it's one of 3 questions that I want to tackle today. in the book of Ecclesiastes, who is speaking, what are they saying, and why should we listen? First of all, who is speaking? Ecclesiastes begins, the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. The author here is identified not with a name, but with a title, the teacher, or the preacher would probably be a little bit better translation of that. It means one who gathers, like, hey, gather around and listen, I've got something to tell you. The Hebrew word for this, I'm going to introduce you to two important Hebrew words today. The Hebrew word for this is kohelet. Kohelet. And that's how it's spelled. Sometimes you'll see it with an H on the end, but that's how it's pronounced, kohelet. If you got a really old translation, it might even, or commentary or something, you might even see it started with a K instead of a Q, but kohelet. He says he's a son of David and king of Israel in Jerusalem, which immediately makes you think of who? Solomon. Because this is a wisdom book. It's in that section of the Old Testament called wisdom literature, and Solomon is the wisdom guy. Most scholars and readers take that to be instead a dramatic persona and not necessarily a historical claim. Essentially, someone who's a thinker like Solomon was, someone who has had every opportunity at the good life and time to reflect on how elusive it is. So it could be that this is from Solomon's day, or it could be that it's from much later. It doesn't really affect how you read or interpret any of this. What matters more is that you really get to know Kohelet, that you get to know the soul of this guy, what makes him tick. So to help you understand the one who's speaking to you, to help you understand Kohelet, I want to give you a few keywords, three of them. Okay, we're going to have lots of lists today. This is the first. Kohelet, first of all, is a philosopher. That's the first keyword you need to understand him. Ecclesiastes is perhaps the most philosophical book in the Bible. It is asking really, really hard questions, and as you read the book, there are way more questions in it than answers, like a philosopher would do. Kohelet is essentially a sage who says, come gather around, come listen, I want to share some life experiences with you. You could say he knows a thing or two because he's seen a thing or two. No, I'm the only one who's ever watched television. Wow. Okay. Maybe I just didn't give enough intro to that one. Okay. If you think of him as a philosophy professor, don't picture the young, just out of grad school professor with the neatly ironed dress shirt and eyes full of idealism, okay? This guy is not in here. You can read Ecclesiastes, leans back in his chair, lights a cigarette, and says, I'm going to level with you here, guys. He's kind of grim, like an existentialist having an even worse day than usual. The one who quit combing his hair years ago and starts class by randomly saying things like, hey, would you rather be a living dog or a dead lion? And you're like, it is 8 a.m., sir. So first of all, Kohelet is a philosopher. Secondly, Kohelet is a comedian, a stand-up comic doing observational humor. You know, back in the day, Seinfeld was famous for what's the deal with, right? Like every joke of his starts basically with that. Let me take this thing that you think you know, painkillers or Pop-Tarts. Let me take this thing that you think you know and really like in this hyperbolic, super critical way, let me pick it apart so that you see that nothing actually makes sense. You don't actually understand things. Life isn't as rational as you think it is. Kohelet kind of does that. He kind of says over and over again, what's the deal with this? What's the deal with this? And he overstates his case to make sure you get the point. And he's riffing. That's the other thing. Like a comedian who's in his element, he's riffing. It's very stream of conscious. It is impossible to outline the book of Ecclesiastes. In fact, one of the commentaries I looked at, one of the scholars attempted an outline of the book, and it was just hilarious to me. I'm going to read it for you. You can try to write this down, but I wouldn't personally. So Ecclesiastes, according to this scholar, Ecclesiastes begins with an introduction. That's good, right? Then he talks about time. Then he talks about wisdom. And then he talks about wealth. Are you with me so far? Then he talks about wisdom again, wealth again, time again, then politics, then death, then politics, then wealth, then friendship, then politics, then religion, then politics, then wealth, then death, then politics, then wealth, then religion, politics, suffering, death, politics, wealth, death, conclusion. Got it? 12 chapters. Boom. Okay, so Kohelet is a philosopher. He is a comedian. And then the third one, he is emo. He is dressed entirely in black. He is an alternative to what everyone else is saying and singing. He is a contrarian. Ecclesiastes is as honest as it gets, so honest that it can be a really challenging read. It's the testimony of someone essentially who lived the rock star life, who had every opportunity at happiness, who chased happiness at full speed, and in the end found it all lacking. Ecclesiastes, I mentioned, is in the section of the Bible that's called wisdom literature. And we need to understand what wisdom is, right? Wisdom is not commands, wisdom is not gospel, right? You don't read it in that literal, straightforward way. Wisdom is good advice except when it's not. Okay? Things that are true except when they're not. Let me give you an illustration of this. Proverbs is the first wisdom book. And Proverbs 26, verse 4 says, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you will be just like him." Show of hands. Don't you dare. Show of hands. Good advice? You're all terrified. Show of hands. Is that generally good advice? If somebody is saying foolish things, you don't want to just get in the heat of the moment, reply, and get into this back and forth, because if they're really foolish, you're just going to get dragged down to their level. You're not going to teach them anything. They're not going to learn anything, right? You'll wind up being just like them. Is that generally true? Okay. That's Proverbs 26:4. You know what comes after that? Proverbs 26:5. And here's what that says. Answer a fool, thank you, perfect timing. Answer a fool according to his folly, or he will be wise in his own eyes. Now, is that generally good advice? Of course it is, right? If somebody is saying something that's foolish, that's incorrect, you don't want lies to just spread all around the world, right? You got to correct the record. Never mind that those two verses are directly contradictory, and you can't obey both of them at the same moment, right? So these are not commands. This is not gospel. This is wisdom. But the point is, do you think that the writer of Proverbs didn't notice that he put those back to back? I think he probably knew what he was doing, right? So in some instances, you don't answer a fool, and in others you do, and, well, if you know the difference, then you're pretty wise. Kohelet does that too. For example, there's a verse where he talks about that it's better to be dead than to be alive. And you read that, and I hope that makes you really uncomfortable, but just don't take it too far, because a little bit later there's a verse where he says, of course it's better to be alive than dead. The bigger picture is that Kohelet seems to be an alternative to the whole idea that there's easy wisdom out there, that there's an immediate answer for every problem. And if you just follow this principle or these 7 guidelines for your life or these 3 keys for relationship, that everything then will be guaranteed to go smoothly. Right? Proverbs is this book that says, follow this advice and everything will go well. And Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, is the one who raises his hand and goes, yeah, except when it doesn't. You can think of Proverbs as kind of the first steps in becoming wise. And then after Ecclesiastes is a book called Song of Songs or Song of Solomon. And if on some level that book is about mystical union with God, then that would be like being very mature and having the closest possible relationship with God. And then right in the middle of them, Ecclesiastes is like the inevitable, necessary deconstruction that has to happen. Right? Between follow these rules and be one with God. There's this wrestling, this deconstruction, this tumbling that has to happen of, well, it doesn't always work out that way. So, Kohelet is a philosopher, a comedian, and an emo rocker. You got the picture? Okay, that's who's talking to you. Next question. What is he saying? Verse 2. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, says Kohelet. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Well, there you go. That's his thesis statement. That's his message. Meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless, everything is meaningless. 3 weeks is sounding like a lot, isn't it? We'll just see how this goes. Maybe you're an optimist and you're like, okay, well, not every sermon has a good intro, right? I'm sure it gets better. Here's from the final chapter, chapter 12. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is still meaningless. He bookends his sermon with despair, which is really a bold move and not what they teach in most seminaries. But that's it. His message is everything is meaningless. And that brings us to the second Hebrew word that's important for you to know as we go through this study together. The word that's translated there as meaningless, everything is meaningless, is this Hebrew word Hevel. Hevel. And again, sometimes you'll see it spelled with a B, but it's always pronounced with the V. Hevel. Turn to your neighbor and say, Hevel. Okay, we're going to have to get really familiar, really comfortable with this word. I like it so much that I have very maturely titled this sermon, Welcome to Hevel. But it really is a word worth knowing. Because it means a whole host of things. There's no one English translation that covers it. So let's put the next slide up. Hevel can mean any and all of these things that you see on the right of this list here. So sometimes it has the sense of meaningless, like ultimately disappointing, without, like not fulfilling, right? You could also translate it, though, as pointless. The King James famously translated it vanity. Vanity of vanities. Everything is vanity. And they don't mean as in like narcissistic. They mean as in like comes to nothing. Like you spend your efforts in vain. You can also translate it futility. Futility. Everything is futility. You can translate it as mysterious or enigmatic. Utterly enigmatic. Everything is utterly enigmatic. And then another one that's really worth considering is this idea of absurdity. That life at almost every moment is really good and, if we're honest, nonsensical. Absurd. Absurdity. Everything is utter absurdity. And then the most literal way to translate it is it's this word that's connected to our breath, vapor, right? Life. Everything is vapor. It's like this mist that just dissipates. It just disappears. It's there and then it's not. It's not lasting. It's you almost have it, right? It's all of those senses in one. And as hard as it is to translate Hevel, you know it when you see it. It's part of all of our lives. So it's hard to translate, but it is not hard to recognize. And that's why I think the word might be helpful to you, because you already know this. You just need a handle for it. You buy a new car, and what happens? It drops in value the second you drive it off the lot. You know why? Hevel. You move into your dream house where you're going to have your family, raise your kids, make the memories of your lifetime. And you know, when you buy that house, you also get a roof and an air conditioner and plumbing and toilets. You have a precious baby, the image of God that you can hold in your hands. And all they do is poop and scream for a year. Or they grow into a teen and a young adult, and they finally get some sense in their head. They become a really good companion and conversationalist, and oh, wait, they just moved out. Or they don't. Either way, what is it? Hevel. It's a beautiful day. The weather's incredible, so you drive around with the windows down, and then the next day your sinuses revolt. You absolutely cannot breathe because of all of the pollen. Wait, it's not the pollen. What is it? Hevel. Or, true story, you gear up to preach a series on Ecclesiastes. You work on the lesson one day, and then you go out to your car to go pick up the kids from school to discover not one but 2 flat tires. It's all Hevel. Hevel, Hevel, says the teacher. Utterly Hevel. Everything is Hevel. Hevel is this. It is the reality that life is never all we want it to be. Life is never all we want it to be. It's good. It's so good, okay? And we're happy. But we also wonder why we're not happier, don't we? And we wonder why life isn't better. Jessica's aunt and uncle, years ago, planned the vacation of a lifetime to this incredible country where neither of them spoke the language there, but they always wanted to go, and they went, and they were having a great time, and then they both wound up in separate hospitals. Hevel. All of life is double-edged. There is no bike you can buy your child where they will not scrape their knee. Do you want them to have the joy of riding, of mastering that? Then get the Band-Aids out and bring a tissue for the tears, because that's life. That's the truth. It's all so beautiful and so beautifully absurd. Life is good for most of us, most of the time, but it's never all we feel it should be. And we wonder, can we be honest about that lack? Can we be honest about the gap of disappointment between our expectations and our reality? Can we be honest about the not so good part of our very good life? Kohelet says, I've got some things to share with you, right? Kohelet says we absolutely can, and he begins a crash course. Welcome to Hevel. Here's how it continues. Verse 3, what do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. And what has been done will be done again. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already, long ago. It was here before our time. And in the end, no one remembers the former generations. Even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. That serves as this big umbrella introduction to the whole rest of the book. And I think he's presenting the knot of Hevel, the knot of our messy lives. And if we were to pull at it, we'd see it's a knot of 5 different threads. And this is another list if you're interested. Together, these 5 things make up Hevel. The first is that life is uncertain. Do we have any planners in the room? And you're probably really good at it. But sometimes the car doesn't start, or it has a flat tire or 7. Right? Life is uncertain. You can work really, really hard, and maybe you'll get a big paycheck, or maybe you'll get laid off. You can't really plan that. You can't really control that. There's no guarantees. No matter how much we try to organize and worry and plan ahead and think things through, there's just a lot of chaos in our lives. There's just a lot of chance in our lives. And in the end, we're all going to die. And we don't even know when. right? Generations come and generations go. It's just, life is good, but it's just so uncertain. Second, life is brief. It's so fast, right? The sun rises and sets and hurries back to rise again. Do you feel this in your bones? The days are just so fast. How is it already the fall? How is it already 2025? How is my kid already this tall? It goes by so fast. And that brings up this, not just the problem of brevity, but the problem of scarcity, right? It's never enough. It goes by too quickly. Third, life is exhausting. Life is so fast. Did I mention that? But it's also so slow, right? The days are so long and so wearisome, and who can do it all? Life is too little, but it's also so much. And we are so fatigued. It's so hard. He says all things are wearisome. And you know, the deeper part of that is even the things you care about. In fact, especially the things you care about. The more you care about something, the more wearisome it is. Life is uncertain. Life is brief. Life is exhausting. Number 4, life is incomplete. I debated here. I almost said unsatisfying. You might prefer that term. He talks about that streams flow into the sea, but the sea is never full. That's us, right? We fill our calendars and our lives with everything we can think of. We say yes to everything. We let FOMO control our decisions, right? We go till we're completely burned out, but it never fills us up either. Life is never completely satisfying, right? Never all we want it to be or imagine it to be. We've never seen enough. We've never heard enough. We're always searching. We're always hungry, not filled. We're always working, not finished. We're always unsatisfied and incomplete. And fifth, and this one may be the hardest one to admit, life is ordinary. Oh, how we long to be special. How we long to be recognized. How we want every day to be extraordinary. But much of life is just ordinary. It's lather, rinse, repeat, isn't it? It's routine and mundane. There are chores to do. There are bills to pay. There's homework to finish. And as much as it pains us to admit this, we are pretty much like everyone else. No matter how hard that is to admit, right? He says, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. Your talent, your skills, it's nothing new. And when you're gone, eventually you'll be forgotten, just like everyone before you. Those great-great-grandparents whose names you do not know. And not just their names, but their lives are lost to you. And so all of our lives will be lost in the future. So this is what Kohelet says, right? Life is so good, and it's so uncertain, it's so brief, it's so exhausting, it's so incomplete and ordinary, it just is. It's all Hevel. Okay, so the third question then. Why would we listen? Why should we listen to this? First, because ignoring it doesn't make it any less true, does it? But second, and more importantly, because the truth sets us free. Kohelet gives us an option beyond faking it. We can hide behind smiling faces and polished images. We can put our best foot forward on LinkedIn and pretend on Instagram that we were way more relaxed on our vacation than we really were. We can talk only about the good in our lives and never the bad. But that bright siding and that image sculpting comes at a real cost, doesn't it? And the cost is we feel more and more isolated, more and more cut off and alone. And we start to think in our darkest moments, we think, maybe I'm the only one struggling like this. Maybe I'm the only one who doesn't have it together. Maybe I'm the only one who struggles to get through the day and at the same time worries about how fast life is passing me by. Maybe I'm the only one who's consuming more and more but feeling so empty inside. Maybe I'm the only one who can't take any more chaos. Maybe I'm the only one who thought everything would be different by now. The honesty of this book can sober us, and we need to be sober, right? Can help us see through the false promises and the exhausting pursuits of this world, can help us see that one of the reasons we're unhappy is that we're so desperately determined to be happy. Kohelet wants to destroy our make-believe world where we try to be shiny, happy people to impress shiny, happy people. Speaking of which, you know who spoke that line about the truth setting us free? Jesus. A preacher who was really more of a philosopher, with a comedian's keen eye for observation and an alternative take on just about everything. Jesus was incredibly loving and gracious and merciful, and he never pretends. He is the most honest person who ever lived, and he invites us to be honest too about the good and the not so good. I mean, he's the one who said, I'm not here for the healthy, I'm here for the sick. They're the ones who need a physician. Christian thinker Francis Spufford sums it up really well, I think. He says, admitting that there's some black in the mixture, that life is good but not perfect, right? Admitting that there's some black in the mixture makes it matter less. Does that make sense? You can dwell on something else, right? You go, yeah, it's not perfect. It helps you stop wasting your time on denial and therefore helps you stop ricocheting between unrealistic self-praise and unrealistic self-blame. It helps you to be kind to yourself. Just hang there for a minute. He says, yes, life is mixed. It's good and it's Hevel. Both are true all of the time. And admitting that we don't have to beat ourselves up for being all bad or fake it as though everything is fine. We can be kind to ourselves and to others. Their life is full of Hevel too. And that's a really interesting thing. And Spufford continues, and forgive him because he's going to sound a little bit like Kohelet here. You might say, ooh, that's kind of harsh. He's overstating things, but don't miss his point, right? He talks about how at its worst, the church becomes one more place where we pretend we're better than others and we've got it all figured out, shiny, happy people. He goes, but that's not what it is. He goes, so of all things, faith, the church, Christianity, isn't supposed to be about gathering up the good people, shiny, happy, squeaky clean, and excluding the bad people, frightening, alien, repulsive, for the very simple reason that there aren't any good people. None of us are perfect. All of us are sinners who fall short of the glory of God. All of us live in this world that is so incredibly good and so incredibly absurd. There's Hevel, right? There are no perfect people. There are no perfect lives. There are no perfect relationships. There aren't even any perfect days. There's black in the mix. There's Hevel in everything. And that, when you think about it, is the problem with life. You're unsatisfied, but it's not because you chose the wrong life. Because you see, everyone is. Right? People are unsatisfied, whether they're rich or poor, young or old, single or married, employed, unemployed, underemployed, overemployed, retired. See, we often attribute Hevel to our luck or our choices. But the reality is, no matter our choices, we cannot escape it. The problem with life, the reason we're unsatisfied, is that there's a problem with everything. Are you familiar with Leonard Cohen's song Anthem? I won't pretend to be a Leonard Cohen expert or to say that I understand exactly all he intends. I know he was intentional about picking Christian symbols in his lyrics and symbols from other faiths and philosophies as well. And I know he doesn't like to explain his songs. But I think there's a lot of Kohelet in what he writes. And I think the main point is pretty clear. It begins, the birds they sang at the break of day, start again, I heard them say. Don't dwell on what has passed away or what is yet to be. The wars, they will be fought again. The holy dove, she will be caught again, bought and sold and bought again. The dove is never free. So ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And then a little bit later, he says you can add up the parts, but you won't have the sum. You can strike up the march, but there is no drum. Every heart to love will come, but like a refugee. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. Kohelet said that a few thousand years earlier. He says that there is a crack in everything, and its name is Hevel. Maybe you didn't know that. Maybe you've just been calling it bad luck or bad choices. Maybe you've been just calling it busyness or pain or grief or fear or shame or loneliness or disappointment or just this season I'm in. Life is good, friends, but it is not perfect. And it's not just your life right now, it's every life all the time. So instead of chasing after what cannot be, we can be honest and maybe just sit and let the light get in. Notice how your life is too fast and too slow, too little and too much, too predictable and too uncertain. And notice, with all of that being true, how much light there is anyway. There is no perfect life. There's always a little Hevel. But that truth only sets us free. Admitting it makes it matter less. When we're honest, we can also be grateful and kind. There's a crack in you, in me, in everything. And that's how the light gets in. Would you pray with me? God, we give thanks to you for the goodness of this life. I pray, Father, that the truth we've talked about, that life is uncertain and too fast and too slow and never all we want it to be. I pray that we can sit in that, that it's a relief to find out that that's not just us, it's everyone. And I pray that admitting that, we can notice something else too. Your goodness, your faithfulness, your willingness to meet us at every place we find ourselves. We thank you, God, for all the light in our lives, for all the light in our hearts, and even for the cracks through which it shines. In the name of Jesus, we pray, and we say, Amen.
Thanks for listening. If this was meaningful to you, subscribe. Find out more about us at clearview.church, or, best of all, join us in person. We worship Sundays at 10 a.m. on the campus of LSU Shreveport.